Today I'm going to talk about Jet Set Radio, one of the greatest games of all time. A couple months from now, it'll be the 25th anniversary of the original release on the Dreamcast in Japan. So what better time than now? I recently completed the game again a few times. And I've completed it before on the original Dreamcast version, and this time I did some other versions. So I have a lot of experience with this game. This time I got a lot better. I really went for scores on the leaderboards and really refined my skills. So I should say I definitely 100% had completed it on Dreamcast when I was younger. And I might have done that twice. I'm not entirely sure. And then when the HD version came out on the Xbox 360, I 100%ed it there as well. And at the time, I got the Steam and PS3 versions, sometime soon after, within a few months after release. But I barely played the Steam one. I think it was running weird on my computer at the time. I don't really remember what the deal was with it exactly, but so I didn't play it there at the time. And then PS3, I got partway through the story, but again, I got sidetracked doing something else. I wasn't playing a ton of games at the time, so that's definitely part of it. So I just wanted to talk about the game today and let you know how much I love this game. It really is just such a treat, such a unique game. All right, let's jump in to the specifics. I have a new set of points that I want to talk about. Compared to if you saw my review for Super Donkey Kong 2, I think it was. It might have been the first one. Anyways, I've thought a lot about how I want to review things and rate them since then. And that was like a few years ago, I think. So it's come a long way, and I think I finally have settled on something that I'm going to go with for now. So first and foremost, we got to talk about the gameplay. I mean, that's what games are about ultimately. So gameplay is a huge component for most games. Almost all, I would say. So I would say overall it feels very smooth, but it has a lot of quirks. And, when this came out originally in 2000, that wasn't an uncommon thing. So while it may feel a bit frustrating and tough in today's time, in 2000, I did not feel that way at all. I just felt like a great game. It's very smooth and very, very, I don't know, good controls. But now it's like, okay, yeah, maybe not the best, but especially if you compare to something like its successor, Jet Set Radio Future, where just moving your character around feels a lot better. But some of the quirks about it do add to the difficulty of the game, which I appreciate. So it's kind of a two-way thing. But overall, I guess like the quirks and weird things with the physics and issues it has didn't age super well, but by no means did that make it age super poorly. Like it's definitely a very playable game even today, I would say. Just some of the quirks that I'm talking about, I'll just list them off. So like attaching to a rail can be finicky. Like you kind of need the right speed and the right approach angle to attach to the rail with like the speed and momentum that you want and expect. Dash jumping is like the fastest movement generally, and that's kind of silly because if you think about if you're blading, like if you keep your blades on the ground and you just keep dashing and going fast, like you would think that would be faster, but that is not the case. Basically, in this game, you want to start a dash, and before the dash ends, you want to do a big jump, and then repeat that over and over and over. And that leads to my next point. You basically need a lot of upkeep just to maintain max speed. So you have to keep dash jumping. You know, you can use rails and like, you know, a few tricks here and there, like to go faster, like going down a slope can be faster without, you know, jumping. But yeah, basically you have to just keep like hitting the dash trigger, jumping. When you land, start dashing again right away, jump again. So it's just kind of goofy. Another quirk is when you bonk into things. So this is like when you just like kind of hit something with a glancing blow, and it like makes your character stumble and slows them down. And also you can bonk into other Rudies is what they're called. They're like the gang members, the characters that you play in the rival gangs. So when you're there are races that are in the game where you have to race against another like rival character, and if you touch them whatsoever, you will just get like it'll like make you move 180 degrees, just completely turn you around and just launch you in a different direction. And it's like it doesn't feel very consistent, and it's really, you just have to avoid doing that or it can ruin you in that race. So that's one. And then there's tripping, and the tripping is like not something that happened to me a lot, at least this time around, and I don't recall it ever really happening to me a lot, but my friend was struggling with that. He was tripping a lot from what it sounded like. But basically, if you have just the right I don't know, like let's, for instance, on the rooftops in Kogane Cho, like if you hit the edge of one roof when you're going along the edge of a different roof, and they like don't, you know, they don't mesh together well, like your character will just trip and fall flat on their face. And it's funny when it happens, but that can be devastating under the right circumstances. So that's a funny one, but like I said, that one doesn't really happen a lot. So then another thing is just turning around. Like let's say you're skating forward and you wanna go the opposite direction. Like that can feel, I guess, kind of realistic maybe, like with how like the character moves and how long it takes, and like how it's not like you can just stop on a dime. I mean, you can do like a hard stop and like slide forward, and that's like also seems realistic, and I like that. But yeah, I guess like just turning around doesn't always feel great. Like sometimes you accidentally like circle around, and it just can be a little bit weird. So yeah, those are kind of the quirks that I thought of when I was thinking about my experience with it. Another thing that is really cool about the gameplay is directional graffiti tagging. So this is when you are doing a large tag or an extra large tag, and basically you have to do directional inputs with the analog stick. And this might be a different point. Well, I guess it's very related to this, but trying to play this on mouse and keyboard is just awful. It feels horrible. Like it just doesn't feel right. Like I couldn't get the directions to work. I guess you have to like click two buttons, because you have to go, let's say, from top to bottom, and you have to curve around the left side. Like, yeah, trying to hit the two buttons just right, or three buttons, I think it is overall, if you're just going from top to bottom. It just feels really bad and slow, and I couldn't even get it to work most of the time. And I didn't try this for super long because I just realized this feels so bad, and this game really is just meant for a controller, which is what it was originally designed for. So I gave up on the mouse and keyboard very quickly. That being said, um, I played on the Xbox controller when I played the Steam version, and then when I revisited the Xbox 360 version, I played with the Xbox Series X controller. And I should say, I think I forgot to mention earlier that when I started playing again, I started with the Steam version. I 100% completed it, and then I went back to the PS3 and continued my playthrough from 2012 and 100%ed it there. And then I went to the 360 version. Okay, I didn't quite 100% the PS3 version at that time. I went to the 360 version and I started working on leaderboard scores, going for really high scores, and basically just replaying every level a few times each at least, and just figuring out better techniques. And once I was done with that, that's when I went back to PS3 and finished the last few levels to 100% it there. So in total I have at least 4 different versions 100%ed. You know, the Dreamcast, 360, PS3, and Steam. Anyway, so I played with the Xbox controller, which felt very good. I would say maybe the best of all the controllers. I think Dreamcast might still be better a little bit. Just like the stick is different. It just feels perfect for this game because that's what it was designed for, you know? So the Xbox controller felt very good, just as good probably as Dreamcast. Like, it's not any worse, I would say. And in some ways better. Like, the trigger's easier to deal with, I think. The PS3 controller, though, I think they just didn't optimize it very well or something, because when I had to do the directional inputs for the graffiti tags, I basically had to over rotate like every time for every single direction. So that just made doing tagging just take longer. And, you know, that's not good for scoring or speed or anything like that. And so that just felt worse. And also just aiming with the directions felt like just trying to land on rails and stuff from jumps just felt worse on the PS3 controller. So I just feel like they didn't optimize it that well. And I didn't play with the 360 controller this time around, but I can remember that also being very good, like just as good as Dreamcast. So I would say if you're going to play this game, stick with an Xbox controller, whether that be a 360 controller, an Xbox One, or Xbox Series controller. I would not go with the PS3 one. But obviously, if you're playing on PS3, that's what you got to use, and it's okay. Like, it works all right. It just doesn't feel tuned correctly for the graffiti tags, especially. Okay. Next, I want to talk about just game design for the game overall. So these are more like how they put the game together, what kind of features it has, quality of life kind of things like that. So first thing I want to talk about is just the tutorial is very easily missed, because basically it's just in the main menu and you don't have to play it to start the game or go through the story or anything. Like, I'm pretty sure I beat the story the first time back in the day without even playing the tutorial. So that's odd, because I get it's nice that you don't have to do it, like if you're replaying the game, but to 100% the game you do, because there's like objectives in the tutorial and there's an achievement for it. So yeah, it's kind of weird how it's not super noticeable. I guess you just that's probably my own fault for just not looking at everything in the menu. I mean, when I was a kid, I missed it, but like I wouldn't miss it today. But anyways, the tutorial is very helpful, actually. It teaches you everything about movement and even turning around. There's one thing it doesn't teach you, which is doing a twist jump trick while you're already on a grind, which is a huge thing for gaining points, and it's kind of a hidden mechanic, but I'll probably get more into that later. I think having a timer on the levels is fun and kind of makes it an arcadey style challenge. But at the same time, I feel like not having a free roam at all, where you can just go into a level, like a whole area of the city without any timer. Like I feel like that's a little bit of a missed opportunity. And even if the original game didn't have it, I think that is something it would have been nice if they added for the HD version. It's just good for beginners because you don't have the pressure of enemies or a timer to mess with you, and it would help for learning levels a lot, and also it'd just be fun to just if you just want to skate around and not have to worry about it. So yeah, like a free skate mode would have been nice to have. And let's talk about unlocking new characters. I think that's a lot of fun. Basically, they'll show up and challenge you to a little showdown, and it could be a race or it could be a set of tricks, like combos that they do, or like like doing a wall ride over a gap or specific things like that. And I think those are a lot of fun, and they're not like super long. The races are pretty hard originally, like when you first play them, but once you're good at the game, like it's not a problem anymore. The secret character Potts is a very cool challenge. It's like, yeah, you basically get challenged by one of the coolest characters in the game, and they do a set of challenges that are pretty advanced, and I just thought that was really cool. How about the missions where you're tagging rival Rudies? So this is like where you have to tag them in the back 10 times each. So there's 3 members and you have to do 10 times each, so it's 30 tags. Those are, I think, a cool idea, but in practice they end up being the most like repetitive levels, and they just aren't as fun as like the standard levels where you're like doing big graffiti tags and like dodging police and all the enemies, helicopters, things like that. So yeah, those levels, I think they're neat the first time around, but they get a little old after that. The scoring mechanics in the game are pretty unclear. Like, you get extra points for having higher inventory of spray cans, and for we'll say, like extra health, like having more health, and also how much time you have left on the in-game timer. So, but it's not clear like how much that is, and you kind of have to experiment to see like what's worth more points. And in the end, just staying in the level as long as possible and doing tricks is the best way to get points. But yeah, it would be nice if it was a little more clear. And another big thing about the scoring is the thing I mentioned earlier with the twist jump trick. If you pull that off, basically it's where you do a jump tricks while you're on a grind, but you do a turnaround at the same time, which you wouldn't really know that is possible unless you watch the demo video when you're on the title screen, and they show characters doing that, and even then you don't know that it gives you ×6 score for that trick, so you're getting 600 points every time you do one of those turnaround jump twist tricks, and that is pretty crazy. And it's hard to do, and I'm still working on that, getting good at that. But yeah, that's like kind of a hidden thing that is very important for scoring. Another thing that I think is something they should have definitely added for this version, at least, is a restart button. So if you just want to restart a level, just having that be in the pause menu where you can just restart, because with the way it's set up, you have to either exit the level or you have to get to the end and then click a retry whether or not you finished the level, or you can just have your character die. But all these things just like take extra time and it's not nice. It would have been a good quality of life update if they added a restart button. And also, if you already like finished a level with a rating that's lower than you want, if you exit back to the garage, like you can't replay the level, and that also sucks because if you're trying to like get Jet on all the levels, but like let's say you missed a few, that's problematic. I will say that adding the retry button after you successfully finish the level is very good because if I recall correctly, the original game did not have that. So if you finish the level and let's say you got motor rank or nitro or something like that, but you wanted Jet, like you got to shut off your game really fast before saving. Well, maybe not really fast because back then there was no autosave, but basically you'd have to restart your console just to stay on that level and play it again. So adding the retry button is nice, but yeah, the restart button in the pause menu would have been better, even better. I will say, so when you exit a level, the way to do that is going to the like end of a road or the end of a railway on a level, and you don't necessarily know where these exits are until you come across them and it says exit, and you only have, if you're moving in that direction, you only have a small amount of time before you're gone. So you have to be careful of that, and I think for beginners this is annoying because you're probably going to end up getting hit by cars and trains, and if a car hits you just right, you'll land on top of the car, and then that car will drive you through the exit within, a second or two, potentially. And that really sucks when it happens because that can just ruin your run. You could be towards the end of a level, you have great score, and then you get hit by a car, you're on top of the car, and you're gone. You're out of the level. So I don't think that's great design. But again, when this originally came out, like I didn't really think anything of that being like an issue. Like it just like, oh, that's how you exit a level. Interesting. Like, so yeah, it probably would have been better just to have an invisible wall, I guess. But or even what they could have done even in this version is when you go far enough in the exit, maybe have a pop-up that comes up that says, do you want to exit, yes or no? And I'm not exactly sure how it would put you back on course if you said no. Like that's something they would totally have to add, but it would have been nice either way. Another thing they added for this game is online leaderboards, which is fantastic. The only problem with that is that there are people that cheat, hackers, and the console versions, PS3 and Xbox 360, I think there's only one or two people each that are cheaters on there, where they just have like a silly amount of score, or on the race levels, they completed the race in 0 seconds, like that kind of thing. But the Steam version is just riddled with hackers because some of those leaderboards, it's like over 200 people or more that hacked. So the Steam ones are pretty much ruined, but the 360 and PS3 versions are pretty good because I think it's just a couple people. So it would have been nice if they maintained the leaderboards, but yeah, or have some kind of like detection of the cheats. But I guess this came out a while ago and that they just didn't have that, and they don't maintain them for whatever reasons. Another thing that I think is a missed opportunity is just not being able to share custom graffiti that you create on your online with other friends. Like I think that would have been cool. And I should mention actually that you can create custom graffiti in the game, and that's a really neat feature, especially for back when this originally came out. And I never spent a ton of time with it, but it is neat and it is cool, and you can create your own graffiti tag and then you can go use that in the missions, and that's just sweet. Another thing is the story missions go in a specific order, and once you're done with the mission, you can't go back to it until you complete the whole story and basically loop back around. Because when you complete the story, it starts you on the first mission again, and you can go through them all again. But if you want to play a specific level and you're already past that level, you have to play a lot of levels just to get to it, and that is annoying. So I think a level select would have been really good to have after you finish a level, like have it added to the list, or just after you beat the story the first time, just have a story level select added in there. That would have been really nice, because that's kind of one reason I don't go for scores as much as I maybe would. Well, I've already gone for scores a lot, but it's just like, if I want to play a specific level, I don't want to have to play, 8 other levels just to get to it. So, and then it's like you have to make a choice when you get a better score. It's like, do I keep this score and, make it so I can't play this level again unless I loop back around, or should I just, quit the level or retry the level again? And I guess like one workaround for this is you can have multiple saves like easily in this version of the game, the HD version. So really you could go through the story multiple times because you'd want to unlock all the characters, and then you could just have multiple playthroughs at different spots in the story, and that's probably the way to do it if you're going for score. That way at least you have a few more options. Yeah. And then I will say that the challenge and difficulty of the game is definitely a positive. I think it's frustrating for beginners, but once you feel comfortable in the game, it is very unique and a cool experience. But it takes you a while to get to that skill level, so you have to hang in there to get there. And for me, obviously this time around, not an issue at all. I've already completed the game twice, going in at 2 or 3 times going into this set of playthroughs. So my advice is just hang in there, be patient. It's the same thing as like a lot of older games that didn't age super well. I would say most games don't feel great anymore from like 25 years ago. So you just have to be a bit more patient, and you will be rewarded by, eventually once you build up that skill and understanding of the mechanics and physics of the game. But overall, like, this is a really nice upgrade from the original game because of the leaderboards and just the retry button. I would say those 2 things are the big ones. So let's talk about art and graphics next. I will say it's amazingly unique and very groundbreaking for the time. Even to this day, games rarely look this like stylistic and have these kind of like cel shaded graphics, which Jet Set Radio is one of, if not the first game to have this kind of art style. So the colors are gorgeous and really pop, and I think the variety of graffiti that you have to choose from is also great. There are just numerous very cool ones, and there's just a lot of variety there, so different styles. And they even, I think they had a contest where people could submit their custom graffiti to be used in the game, and some of those were selected, and that's just really cool. You will notice that this version has different graffiti than the original for some of them. It has a lot of the original ones, but there's definitely a good amount that were replaced for whatever reason. Even the original version between the different regions of Japan and Europe and the US had differences on the graffiti, so that's interesting. And it didn't bother me. I think some of the ones they added and changed were really cool. So And I will say that the art and graphics aged very well. You can't tell that it's an old game just by looking at it because of how stylistic it is. And I think the HD remastering of it just makes it look very, very nice. And personally, since I was playing the 360 version on the Series X, it just looked just great. And I think Steam can provide this as well. If you like turn up all the settings, you probably get a similar look to the Series X look. But the PS3 version, and I assume the 360 version, if you're playing on 360, yeah, they don't look as good, as sharp, but it still is definitely an upgrade from the Dreamcast version. So that's pretty sweet. I'll talk about the story. It's very cool. I think painting the city, claiming your turf while taking on rival groups is fun. And then you add in the police and the corrupted corporation of Rokaku. And I think surviving and fighting them is also very, very cool. Just badass, really. And then I think having DJ Professor K set the stage, before and after like every mission. Like he has his radio show and he says stuff kind of saying what's going on, and being this like underground radio show is just such a treat. It's so cool. And then there's also storytelling boards where there's like basically this board that's like kind of like a comic, and it's like scrolling down and there's this like really nice voiceover where they're like talking about the story. I think that's also very well done. Very nice. And then I'll talk about the setting. I think the setting is absolutely perfect. They really did well with it. The setting is in Japan, like a fictionalized version of Japan, but it's like based on real places. And then there's also some America missions, the U.S., I should say. So yeah, I would say the variety is just really good. Like the different regions you go into in Japan, you've got Shibuya-cho, Benten-cho, and Kogane-cho. They're all very different. One of them is night, one of them's daylight, one of them's sunset, and then you have the two missions in the U.S., which one of them's like kind of like a New York, Madison Square, that sort of thing. I think it's called, and it's called Grind Square in the game. And then there's is it Time? It's just Times Square. Yeah. Anyways, so. And then there's the street, which is basically, it's by like a fuel station, and there's like a little, I guess, basketball area, and then just like a tall building, and then it's like elevated train tracks, and that's also a cool one. That's another one of the U.S. missions, and it's just fun. You start in Japan, and then suddenly you're like, oh, but there's these other characters who are also dealing with the Rokaku, corrupted group in America. And it's just like, then you switch to those two missions, and they all look so different. And then yeah, you're back in Japan for the rest of the story, and it's just really cool. I really love Benten-cho, the City of the Night, like that. I just think looks great and made me want to go to Japan. And Shibuya-cho as well, that's the daylight one. Like, that's really cool. And when I went to Shibuya in real life and seeing the similarities, you got the bus terminal and like the crosswalk and stuff. It's just so cool. It made me want to go to Japan playing this game. So that's something. Yeah, and none of the areas feel boring or out of place. So very well done with the setting. As far as characters go, I think it's pretty cool playing as a group of like rebel teenagers taking on corruption, and every character is unique and has fantastic design, and they all have unique voice actors. And then Potts, he's a secret character. I think that's really funny. He basically becomes like a android dog, basically. That's pretty funny. My favorites are Noise Tank, Garam, Yo Yo, Love Shockers, and Cube. I think those are all fantastic. And I literally named my gaming clan after the Noise Tanks. So that you can just tell I took a lot of inspiration from this game and had a big impact on me. So as far as the villains, Goji Rokaku, I think he's really cool. Just this heartless like corporation guy, businessman that's just out to, I don't know, kill teenagers. Apparently, it's wild. Just he wants control of Japan and the world. And then smaller scale, the captain of the police force, Captain Onishima. He's just funny with his like overkill tactics, like sending in tanks and helicopters and paratroopers and this like a SWAT team, and it's just like, this is crazy. And his voice acting is just, yeah. Well, I'll get to voice acting, but yeah, I just love it when he comes in and starts yelling. And it's fun that you can spray some of the enemies, like the helicopters and like the back of Onishima. That's cool. And then DJ Professor K, let's not forget him. Very cool. Love his energy. A real treat. And as far as voice acting goes, like there's not a ton of it. Like most characters don't get very many lines. But the stuff there is in the game is fantastic. So you've got the DJ Professor K. Billy Brown did the voice, and that I think is the best overall. It's just a real treat. And yeah, like I said, Captain Onishima yelling is very good. And then like the rest of it's mostly just like your character saying like one word lines here and there, like they do something cool or like get hurt or something like that. So they'll like make sounds and things. So, and that can get a little bit repetitive, but it's not to the point where it's like gets to be annoying. And I think the enemies like yelling at you, like the police and things when they're chasing you around, I think that's just fun. And it can also add to the intensity. And then as far as just sound design overall, like I think it's well put together. I've got no complaints there. You know, the tagging and like the grinding. I think there maybe could have been more variety of sounds, but like I didn't have any issue with it. It seemed fine. It fit perfectly. It's good. And then let's talk about music. So music is a huge part of this game. You've got the underground radio station, Jet Set Radio, and you've got just such unique tracks. The in-house stuff that Sega did, you know, it's like a lot of sampling. It's like electronic, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of energy. And then you've got other stuff, which is like hip-hop and like metal. And I think the best part about this version of the game is that it has more songs than any of the other releases, like the original 4 releases, those being the original Japanese release, the US release, and then the European release. And then there was another Japanese release that was made later on. And all of those, you know, those mostly made it into this version. There's only 3 songs total that didn't get into this version. I think one of them from the PAL release, and then one of them from the original Japanese release, and then one of them from the US release. And unfortunately, that US release one is called the Yappy Feet. That is one of my favorite songs in the game, the original game. So it was disappointing that it didn't make it into this one, but you know, licensed music is just always an issue for games and remasters and remakes. So I'm just happy they got most of them in there. And it's great that they combined them into this one package, because a lot of people didn't experience some of those songs if you didn't play the different versions. So, yeah. The other 2 songs that are missing it's called Dunny Boy Williamson Show. And I feel like that one doesn't fit very well from my perspective with the game, so I don't feel terrible about it not being there. And then the other one's called Many Styles. And then I'll just say my favorites in this version are Electric Toothbrush, Rocket On, Bout the City, Let Mom Sleep, Dragula, and Just Got Wicked. Now I'll talk about the length of the game. I'll say it's just right. It can take a while your first playthrough as you're learning the levels. Like, I think they don't expect you to beat levels on first, second, sometimes even third try. Later on in the game, they get pretty hard. And then the second playthrough, or like whatever playthrough you're doing when you're going for all jet rating, that can also take a while as you like figure out how to optimize your route through the level. So but I don't feel like the length is bad at all. And if you're just doing the story, I think it definitely keeps you engaged and going. There's no lull in there. I think 100% completing the game can feel a little bit long, as like especially like the jet graffiti and jet technique levels. Those are modes where you're just doing purely a lot of graffiti, or you're just doing tricks basically the whole time. And those ones are they get repetitive. The jet graffiti missions are like 17 and a half minutes long. So you go and do all your sprays, and then you're just doing tricks for like 10 minutes or whatever. And then jet technique is, just like 10 minutes as well. So those, like, when you add them up, there's 5 different levels for each of those modes. That can get to be a bit long, but I guess part of why I feel that way is just because I was playing it a lot and optimizing for scores, and I did like the PS3 version and the Steam version recently, so I was just like playing these levels a lot of times. Like, if you're just doing one time 100%ing, like, it's not a big deal and it's fun, but I really went overboard, so I had to play them a little more times than I would like to. They're just not as fun as the story missions where you've got enemies and things happening. One other thing I should mention in game design is there are these like cutscenes that pop in when enemies appear on the level, which happens after you've done a certain amount of like required tags, and then also when you just do like certain jumps in the level, it'll like cut to a little cutscene showing you character doing this, and those can be disruptive. I like the enemy intro ones, but the trick ones can be disruptive, because basically you're just doing a trick and then all of a sudden it cuts to that like little cutscene and you're not playing anymore. You're waiting for that cutscene to go, and then you got to remember where you were and where you were trying to move. So that, I would say, is not great design, but it's not, I guess once you get used to it, it's not too big of a deal, but it is an annoyance nonetheless. And where was I? We'll talk about just the difficulty. I think it's just right. The first playthrough gets to be pretty hard towards the end. I would say the last 4 like main levels, Grind Square, Explosion, Bent and Burning, and Fight or Flight, are doozies and pretty hard the first time you do them. And then getting jet on all the levels, it's kind of the same thing. You're like, the levels now, but you don't know them well, so now you got to really learn where all the tags are, which ones you want to hit first, how you can get around from one section of the level to another. But I will say, like, when you finish the story the first time, it feels rewarding because it is kind of difficult, and then when you get all jet, that definitely feels really rewarding. And then on top of that, the detached achievement, which is only featured on the 360 and Steam versions, you have to play through the whole game, the whole story, without getting latched onto by an enemy. So there's certain enemy types that will grab onto you and hold you, and you have to try to like shake them off. And you have to do the whole game without getting latched onto. And if you're doing that, like, without like shutting off the game or anything like that, like where you're just like, if you get latched onto, you restart, it can be a bit unforgiving. And for me, it only took like a few tries. I think 2 or 3. I think it was 2 maybe this time around, because I did it on the Steam version. The 360 version I did back in the day, and I might have turned off the game back then. I think I did. So this time I was like, I definitely want to do this with no cheese, just total legit. And then my friend Relics, he did it as well, and I think it took him just a handful of tries. So it seems bad, like when you're first starting the game, it seems like really daunting, but once you know how the enemies work and how they move, like, it's very doable. You just gotta practice and get good at the game and understand the levels and the enemies. And I think that's a fun and unique challenge. It's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely, not something you would necessarily think of doing without there being an achievement. So it's a unique challenge that they added in. That's fun. Very unforgiving though if you fail on one of the last levels. And then let's talk about replayability. This game, I would say, is very replayable. I've played it 100% 4 or 5 times now, and I plan to do more. I plan to get the Vita version at some point, and I do plan to revisit the Dreamcast version for scores and then play the alternative Dreamcast versions for the other regions, because I've never 100% of those or even got through the story, even though I do own those ones. I did play them a little. And then, well, I don't have the second Japanese release, so that's still something I gotta get. But yeah, so I would say, I'm still just enjoying it. Like, I could go play it again right now, despite how much I've played recently. I might do that today. So it's just a lot of fun. And going for higher scores is just a blast. It feels like good motivation for trying to just do a little bit better, optimize a little more on a level, and just figuring out how to kind of not perfect, but try to move towards perfecting your route and your plan for the level. And then just once you have the plan, then it's like the execution, the movement and anything that you can do to get to where you need to be faster. And then obviously learning the tricks and doing the jump twist trick, like getting that down and incorporating that into your run. That's another thing. That's a lot of fun. And the leaderboards definitely add to the replayability. And let's see. Let's talk about series cohesion. So this is how well does a game fit into its series? Since this is the first game, it gets a perfect score because this is the one that set the tone. So, but I will still give you a little comparison to Jet Set Radio Future. You might have seen I did a video about Jet Set Radio Future, my thoughts and whatnot, when I completed it back in 2013. So I do have perspective on that as well. I will say this one is more difficult. It has a steeper learning curve, and to me, it has better music. And I think the overall tone and just setting is more well done. And then I also just like the character designs and the overall aesthetics more as well. But that being said, Jet Set Radio Future is a great game as well. I still prefer this one more. And this one, it kind of has it all. I think the second one has, smoother controls and stuff, but it lacks some of the fun things like the directional graffiti tags and just how the dashing works, which that's either way is fine, I think. So yeah, anyways, it gets a perfect score for series cohesion because come on, it's the first game. There are some extra things in this version. There's a documentary about the making of the game, more so about the original game, and I think that's a really neat addition, and I really enjoyed being able to get insight from the developers and the creators of the game. And then they also added bonus music tracks from Jet Set Radio Future, which is cool, but you can only access them in the garage, not while you're actually playing. If they were put into the levels where you're actually playing, like, that would be better. So, but still a fun little addition. And then lastly, I'm just going to talk about the achievements and trophies and how good of a list I think that is. I think the 360 and Steam achievements are basically a perfect achievement list. Like, I don't have any complaints about it. It really has it all. It has, you have to complete everything with Jet. You have to use all the graffiti. You have to unlock all the characters. You have to play every level getting Jet. You have to do all of it. And then it adds in that detached achievement, which is a fun, unique challenge. So, and you even have to do the tutorial. So it really is all encompassing, which is exactly how I think an achievement list should be. And with the addition of extra challenge, and that's like a cherry on top, really. Like, that detached isn't even necessary, but I think it's a fun addition because it makes you try to play the game in a new way, which is good for replayability. The PS3 list of trophies is pretty bad because for some reason they don't match up with the achievement lists on the other systems, which, that almost never happens these days, but back then things were a little different. So yeah, you don't have to use all the graffiti. You don't have to get Jet on every level, I don't think. And, I'll double check that real quick because I don't want to be given false information, but I know it doesn't have detached. And let's see. I'm going to see if it unlock all characters. Okay. So to unlock all characters, you do have to get Jet. So I guess that is a little redundant. So you do have to collect all the graffiti souls. So there are collectibles in this game. Creating your own graffiti. But yeah, you don't have to use all the graffiti and you don't have to do detached. But I guess it's not as bad as I thought it was. This list is actually okay. It's okay. Just because to get all the characters, you do have to get Jet on everything. So I guess they just didn't have those redundancies, but it's still, I don't know. I think because the lists have more miscellaneous things in them for 360 and Steam, like there are like certain things like do this on this level and that sort of thing. I think they're just more fun that way. So yeah, I guess it's not as bad as I thought it was, but it's still not as strong as the other versions. So that's about all I have to say, but I will wrap it up with some ratings to give you some numbers to work with. All right. So just we'll go over each category that I spoke about, and basically all three versions are the same except for that achievement and trophy list, which that's kind of just like a side thing. It's not like a true part of the game anyway. So all right, gameplay, I'm going to do these 1 to 5, so just keeping it kind of simple. Gameplay, I'm going to give it a 4 just because of some of the quirks and issues I spoke about. Game design, 4, same thing. It's just kind of, leaderboards aren't maintained, and there's no restart button for levels, and the exiting levels is still kind of an issue. Art and graphics, 5. Story, 5. Setting, 5. Characters, 5. Voice acting, 5. Sound design, 5. Music, 5. Length, 5. Difficulty, 5. Replayability, 5. Series cohesion, 5. And then achievements and trophies, 5 for Xbox 360 and Steam, 4 for PlayStation 3. And that's kind of where I'll leave that. An overall rating for the game, I don't really have a great, I'm not going to give a set in stone number because I'm still working on a new system with rating that, and I want to get kind of all the games I'm familiar with all into one list and see where it lands there, and just let the list rate itself. But I will say this is a very high ranking game for me, and I would say it's a 95 to 100. If I were to guess where I would like to put it in the end, it would probably be a 97 or 98, probably, just because of some of the things that aren't, maybe haven't aged well or feel a little too unforgiving or whatnot. But overall, I mean, that is such a high rating, and I just love this game. And I think this version, it's the best version, clearly, even though the Dreamcast version is very cool. And I still recommend playing it if you like older games and have a Dreamcast. But yeah, if you're trying to get this game, that's too bad. You can still get used Dreamcast games of the original version, but as far as the HD version, there's no physical edition. It was delisted from 360. It was delisted from Steam. So you're gonna have to get a PS3, and you can buy the PS3 and the Vita versions on the PS3 store. So that's the way to get the game in this day and age, unfortunately. So if you wanted the nice crispy graphics with the Series X and the Steam version, well, sorry, you should have bought the game. It's very unfortunate, and I hope that they re-release this. I suspect they might, because there is a third Jet Set Radio game coming. So with this delisting, I'm thinking they're putting something together. Maybe another Dreamcast collection, or maybe finally they're going to re-release and make a high definition version of Jet Set Radio Future, which has never happened. So putting those two together, I think, would be a great way to get people ready for Jet Set Radio 3. And yeah, I highly recommend everybody try this game. I really do think it is one of the most unique and greatest games of all time. And be patient. Just enjoy the ride, That's what you got to do with these older games sometimes, most of the time. And I don't have too much else to say, so I'll probably leave it at that. But I hope other people can enjoy this game, enjoy the music and the art and the just the overall feeling of it, And I just had such a great time playing through this again with my friends, Relics and Fear. So I'm not done with Jet Set Radio. I'm going to get the Vita version. I'm going to get a Vita to play it on. And I'm going to get better scores in the future as well. My 360 scores, you can go take a look at them. They're pretty optimized, but there's definitely still some room for improvement on a lot of them. Well, all of them really, but especially some of them I didn't heavily optimize, we'll say. And then the PS3 and Steam versions, I could use a good amount of work on those ones. So still plenty of fun to be had. And I'm gonna go back to Dreamcast as well. So I'll give you probably a separate review for those versions. But this is my thoughts and reviews on Jet Set Radio HD for Xbox 360, Steam, and PlayStation 3. I appreciate you listening. If you made it this far, you're a real champion. Yeah, if you want to leave a comment about your favorite group, mine is the Noise Tanks, obviously, but your favorite group and just some of your favorite characters, your favorite music tracks, I'd like to hear about any of that. I like talking about the game. You can check out my other videos on my other channel, which is my gameplay channel, which has all of my best runs for every level, and it has some additional things too. I have a playlist for this, and I'll link that in the description. And I also have got my leaderboard scores, a video of that for the 3 different versions uploaded on there. And I've got a nice video it's a compilation of infinite grinds in case you're struggling. You can see how you can loop your grinds around so that you can keep your multiplier going indefinitely. And a couple other little combos I threw in there. So check that stuff out. Go play some Jet Set Radio. Thanks for listening. And yeah, Jet Set Radio.